This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, we the people find this incredibly contrived.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi critique and review show that puts the humanities back into science fiction. I am Gepwin, and I am joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi.
Oh, great googly moogly.
Yep. So I will say before we get into anything that this was less bad than I was fearing, but yeah.
So the episode, it starts fine, then it turns into a completely different episode that's kind of what for a while, and then the ending, the last act, just pulls all this stuff straight out of left field where you're like, wait, what now?
Yep. So we've gone from this is a pretty straightforward kind of mystery episode to, oh no, we're once again captured and being held hostage and things are going wrong, to what?
It follows a 3-act structure because every act could be its own freaking show.
Yes.
And the last one is just, what? Where did this come? Why?
There's some underlying things that are set up earlier, but yeah, it's like, what? This makes no sense. Anyway.
But also, we'll get to it. That I just love how every character just has this sudden realization that makes absolutely no sense based on 2 random names that also don't make any sense.
Yep.
And they're just like, oh my god, it's so obvious. Like, wait, what? How?
We've solved the case. It was an old man, Jones from the haunted amusement park who did 9/11. What?
That's Scooby-Doo went dark.
Let's just get into it.
This episode is called The Omega Glory, and it was written by Gene Roddenberry, which is usually just disastrous. Good God.
So, whoops.
Like, I get, looking back at this thing, he had some interesting ideas and he had some progressive stuff, but wow, he could not write.
Yeah. Sorry, Gene. We kind of love you, I guess, but yeah.
Stuck with producing.
Stick to producing. Yeah.
We've only got a couple of guest stars in this episode. Morgan Woodward as Captain Ronald Tracy, who is well known for his role in a soap opera called Dallas. And
yes.
He also appears in Cool Hand Luke and Gunsmoke.
And he was in the X-Files once.
Roy Jensen as Cloud William,
who was in a bunch of stuff. Was he? I think he was in Fantasy Island.
Yeah, and also Daniel Boone, which we've heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
He also has the fame of being the first person to be beat up by Kane on the TV show Kung Fu.
Oh, I guess someone had to be the first.
Also, Irene Kelly as Saria, who is never named and has 1.5 speaking lines, but I thought I'd mention her because she should get some recognition for showing up and hanging out near Shatner in that leather bikini.
And being occasionally threatened by him in a couple spots there too.
Yeah, she's the girl. Because there's always a female guest star to hang out in a leather bikini in this show.
Yes.
All right, we should jump in. There's going to be a lot to unpack at the end of this.
Yes.
The Enterprise is en route for Omega 4, some random planet. They have no particular stated reason for being here.
Yeah, they're just going places.
They detect a Federation ship in low orbit. It is the USS Exeter, captained by Ronald Tracy. After they receive no response from the ship, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and random guard dude beam over to find the ship deserted, with nothing left of the crew but uniforms and piles of a white dust.
Wait. Gepwin, where is everybody, Gepwin?
They're dead, Izix.
Who is?
Everybody is, Izix.
What, Captain Pike's yeoman?
Everybody's dead, Izzy.
What, Gary Mitchell?
Everybody's dead.
What, Carlisle?
They're all dead. Everyone is dead, Izix.
Arlen Galloway is she?
Everybody's dead, Izix.
Not Lang. Really?
Yes, everybody's dead. Everyone's just dead, Izix.
Wait, are you trying to tell me everybody's dead?
I should have never let you on this show. They make their way to the bridge. McCoy makes the determination that these little piles of powder are, in fact, the remains of the crew, with all of the water in their bodies removed.
So it's good to know that if you are completely dehydrated, you're turned into crystal meth.
Yeah, I'm still pretty sure that you would just be oily goop, because you'd still have lipids.
Not all of the fluids inside your body are necessarily water.
Yeah, it's a cool effect to have just the little piles of powder, but I'm pretty sure it would be just goopy. They find the final log entry from the chief medical officer. He warns that anyone seeing this message is now infected by a horrible thing that will make them die unless they beam down to the planet immediately. He also tries to say something about Captain Tracy, but is cut off before he can finish by dying.
So wait, so you had enough time to put in a log message, but not enough time to put on a distress beacon saying, go away, this is dangerous, there's an infection.
Yeah, also, he knows you have to beam back down to the planet, and instead of doing that, he's wasting 10 minutes recording a log message and then dying.
As you do.
The crew beam down where they find a village full of slightly Asian-looking people dressed in Mongolian-style outfits.
Yeah, the architecture here is kind of like American Southwest meets Spain meets, I don't know, old-timey Persian, maybe?
It's the village from Private Little War.
Oh, yeah. Just reuse,
The people in the village are in the process of executing a large white guy who's growling and yelling and wearing furs, and also have a woman that they're holding captive nearby who may be the next one to be killed. The crew interrupt this, and before much else can happen, Captain Tracy appears, ordering that the villagers stop trying to kill everyone while he talks to the new visitors.
Wait, so this guy didn't open the door for Ulf Stormcloak to let him out of the city? Okay.
Tracy explains that he found this planet reading as harmless and tried to make contact with the native villagers called Khans.
Calms.
Yeah,
Calms. That name sounds familiar.
They are quite friendly once they get over the fact that he, as a random white dude, looked like the Yangs, the savage people who they were trying to execute earlier and who are apparently barely human and will attack anyone they see on sight.
They're all growly and mean, and they just want to murder you for realsies.
They investigated this planet, and when they went back, they found out that the whole crew dies of an infection, but as long as you stay on the planet, something in the environment keeps you alive. But now, no one else can leave unless McCoy can figure out what that thing is.
Well, that's mildly inconvenient.
McCoy says that could probably take, years.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to be doing our retirement here then, guys.
The crew are taken to a random storeroom to work while Spock and their security guard go out scouting, not before Spock comments on how weird it is that Tracy seems to be violating the Prime Directive, the actual Prime Directive mentioned by name this time.
So we're not supposed to interfere with cultures just haphazardly and things like that. In fact, we probably shouldn't even be here.
Yeah. And they definitely shouldn't know why that they all have phasers, which they all know for some reason.
Yeah. There's something weird going on here.
McCoy confirms that they are in fact infected with something, and there are what he calls immunizing agents in the environment that are keeping them safe, but he has no clue what those are or how to isolate them. A little while later, Spock and the guard return, having been attacked by Yangs.
Oh no, there's violence? We're being invaded? The city is under siege?
No, it's just one random dude got stabbed a little.
Oh, okay.
But while they were out, they found evidence that Tracy has been out haphazardly killing Yangs with his phaser.
Wait a moment. Is he doing a colonialism?
Yeah, this apparently is a big Federation no-no.
All right, this time we have the guest stars in the wrong here because he's the guest star.
Tracy comes in looking all crazy, just to confirm that, yeah, he's definitely the bad guy, and to rub it in even more, he vaporizes their security officer.
I guess we're glad we brought a security officer that was never really named?
Yeah, I think he was sort of named once, but, Tracy ties them up, mostly so he can monologue to Kirk about his motivations. He found that the people on this planet have no disease and live for thousands of years, and he thinks it is because of whatever this inhumizing environmental thing that McCoy is looking for is, and if they found it, they could, cure all human disease and make people live for thousands of years, which he thinks is worth killing a few hundred people.
I don't know. I'm having some flashbacks to an episode of Babylon 5. I think it was something about Deathwalker, but,
Kirk thinks this is super crazy, so Tracy decides to throw him into the cell that he's holding the two Yangs from earlier. This takes way too long, and we have to cut away from Kirk fighting several times to, show McCoy being weird and creepy to a woman and then not escaping.
It's like, oh no, I'm reaching for this tool, and the guy that I thought was asleep, he has his sword, and I'm just actually reaching for this glass of water instead, yes.
There's a super dumb, drawn-out half fight between Kirk and the two Yangs, and Spock is watching from the other cell, and he looks way too amused and pleased with this situation. Kirk finally circles around and gets the woman to stand close enough to Spock for him to knock her out with a neck pinch, and then the guy runs over and is like, oh no, she's knocked unconscious, and Kirk goes, yay, now we can get free. And then suddenly the Yang man goes, freedom, that's one of our holy words. How do you know our holy words? And Kirk goes, oh, that's our holy word. And then they break the bars out of the window, but then the Yang dude knocks out Kirk.
I thought we were getting along for a second over freedoms.
That was 20 minutes of this episode.
Yes.
Kirk comes to, according to Spock, about 7 hours later. It's a long period of unconscious.
Yeah, so Kirk... Well, it kind of suggests that he needed, a good night's sleep before that, but still, it's sort of if that's just from him being knocked out, he should probably go see a doctor. Hey, where's McCoy?
Also, here's a fun tidbit that they never seem to adhere to in TV or movies. Being knocked unconscious like that blanks out your memory for about 15 minutes before you get knocked out. So you would have no clue why you were in this cell or what happened.
Oh, well, you just said the fight took 20 minutes, so he'd at least know how he's got in the cell.
Yeah, so he'd remember getting into the cell, and then he'd be unconscious. He goes out of this window hole that they made earlier, unlocks Spock's cell with random keys that were just there.
Yeah, very, very, very convenient, very contrived, as it were.
And they go to save McCoy. Spock tries to use some of the equipment to get in contact with the ship, and McCoy explains that he did find that this planet probably had some sort of massive biological war in its distant past. And the environment adapted to the, biological disease things to create immunization, which is how environments work, apparently. Sure.
Yeah, it's not just going to, everything that it can be effective from it, just die off because that's how you design your bioweapon, and the things that are, happen to survive just have a natural immunity of some sort, and it just happens to be those that continue on. It's that they are doing that plus making everything else immune somehow.
Yeah, the trees just make immunization pollen, I guess.
Yes.
So this immunization thing takes a while to kick in, but after that, you're cured. So if the other crew had just stayed on the planet a little bit longer, they would have been fine. And, that means that you can leave whenever you want.
Oh, well, hopefully they're not carriers, though.
Yeah, otherwise, everyone in the ship is dead.
Yes. It's all right, we're back here. Oh, wait, everybody else is dead now. Huh.
Also, the more important thing to note about this immunity thing is that it's just immunity. No one is living a long time because of the immunity. They're living a long time because their ancestors had to survive this super harsh environment. And it's just natural for the species on this planet to live for thousands of years, because even though they look exactly human, it's a different frickin' planet and they're a different species.
Yep. Not everyone has an average lifespan of about 75 some years. These are aliens. They can have alien sort of things going on. So, Tracy, you're kind of completely wrong about everything.
Now, McCoy says that if you started a similar biological war on Earth and waited a few thousand years, you might get similar effects in humans, but he doesn't think that'd be worth it.
I don't want to die of biological war.
Tracy comes in and blows up the communicator that Spock's been working with. He's very angry because when the Yangs escaped, they let everybody know about where the village is and their defenses, and now the Yangs have come and basically killed everyone.
Well, once again, we have a massive, interesting fight between opposing forces done completely off screen.
The fight we do get is Kirk, for some reason, playing along with Tracy for a long time while he tries to make him request phasers from the ship. then ineffectively knocking the gun out of his hands, being saved only by the fact that Tracy runs out of ammunition at the last second. And then when Kirk finally gets the upper hand, he finds himself surrounded by spear-wielding Yangs.
Well, that fight was kind of pointless. Moving on. Action!
The Yang that Kirk was imprisoned with is a man named Cloud Williams, and he is in fact the chief and son of chiefs of this tribe of Yangs.
Mm-hmm.
He assembles a group of Yangs and the crew with Captain Tracy all tied up to celebrate them taking over the village, and you can hear that there's sounds of wild partying going on outside.
Yes, and it seems to be sampled from certain westerns from that sort of era.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Now, apparently, this village was actually taken from the Yangs generations ago. So this is them retaking their territory.
Yeah, reconquest. They're establishing themselves on their territorial cores again.
This gets Kirk to thinking. And, if his white dude ancestors from the United States had gotten cast out into the wilderness for generations, maybe they'd start acting like American Indians specifically referenced and quoted from the show.
I got nothing on this.
Also, they're called Yangs, which sounds kind of like Yankees. So these are obviously the descendants of baseball fans.
Yes, as I say, it's like, are they New Yorkers?
Spock also goes, communists.
Oh no, the communists took over on this planet and after the fall of civilization, I guess.
This planet was another exact parallel Earth thing, except on this planet, they had the war that your planet avoided.
Well, at least it doesn't have the exact same continents as Earth, like in Miri. At least they're diverging a little bit. It's maybe just sort of a coincidence that there's a slight similarity in the naming conventions here. Surely there isn't something completely out of nonsense land that is exactly the same for no good reason.
Just then, they walk in with a U.S. flag.
What? Seriously? What the hell?
Cloud says he's now going to speak the holy words and starts a badly, badly distorted version of the Pledge of Allegiance that Kirk recognizes and finishes. This surprises everyone because he shouldn't know their holy things.
This begs many, many, many questions.
Yeah.
But I think the one that I think might actually lead interesting more discussion is, why is he speaking in effectively Star Trek English, which universal translators, whatever, you never know. But yet it's clear that he's speaking the pledge there inaccurately. And why is that the case and not being translated, but he can speak normally other times? I don't know.
Well, he's obviously speaking distorted English that he reads. They show you English written down on pieces of paper. This is just an exact frickin' parallel Earth thing.
Yes.
But wait, there's more.
Yes, there's more.
Tracy, for some reason, decides to be a complete a-hole and tries to convince the Yangs that Kirk is an agent of the devil.
As you do.
He points out Spock's ears. Again, the ears.
He must be a demon of some sort, a servant of the Dark One.
Cloud opens another unnamed book that's almost definitely supposed to be a Bible or something. He opens it to a drawing of Spock.
Wait a moment, Vulcans have been here before?
It's not a drawing that, like, a dude with pointed ears. It is a drawing of Spock.
Yes. Just kind of hanging out, and the fire and the flames, that kind of thing.
They decide that to prove that they're not servants of the evil one, Kirk needs to say more holy words, because if an evil one says holy words, it's going to burn his mouth.
I guess that kind of makes sense in your religion, I guess.
Cloud starts another very distorted speech, but this time Kirk doesn't immediately recognize it. So instead of saying the holy words, he suggests that Tracy and him fight to the death.
Yeah, because good always triumphs over evil, so let's do that.
They're tied together, and a knife is placed in the middle of the room. They have to fight for it.
Wait, their wrists are bound. This reminds me of a music video.
In the meantime, Spock mind controls the Yang woman to grab and open one of their communicators, because this mind control thing is definitely going to convince them you're not an evil demon.
Yes. Don't worry, it's not relevant other than getting the communicator open.
Kirk gets the upper hand, but refuses to kill Tracy, and before this becomes a problem, Sulu and some guards beam down because they detected the communicator signal.
Like, wait a moment. Our people have been down there, and they told us to go away because there's a deadly disease. Let's just beam down into it, because the communicator's open.
Cloud asks why Kirk didn't read the holy words if they are able to do all this stuff, and he goes, well, it's because you said the holy words so badly I didn't know what they were. And then he grabs the document that he was reading from and starts reading the Constitution of the United States.
What the hell, people? This makes no sense. Why is this alien
And then he says that these words are amazing and magical and have never been written so well before, even though this planet came up with an exact duplicate of them, apparently.
Well, if they've lived for thousands of years, maybe they did it first.
That's true. They must have. And then he goes, this isn't a holy document. It is not for only chiefs. It is for everyone, including the cons, because it has to apply to everyone or no one. And Cloud goes, huh? And Kirk goes, yeah, it's fine. We'll leave now.
Yeah. Kirk, I give you points for trying to establish the universality of rights for everybody. But yeah, this guy is like, what?
Yeah. Do you understand? No. Okay, then.
Well, I guess our work here is done. Let's leave.
He leaves, secure in the knowledge that the Constitution, now revealed as the Constitution, will magically fix the planet.
Everything is now set right. Also, Sulu and security team, you have to stay here for a few more hours.
Yeah. But there's a party. So
that was an episode.
Everything was fine and dandy and stupid until it got even more stupid.
Yes. It's like, okay, we're going down this path. It's steep, and we're kind of having trouble. And then we see the path going, around a turn, on the side of the cliff here. And instead of taking the path down, we'd leap into the void.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Let's talk about apotheosis.
Apotheosis. Let's go.
Apotheosis is a Greek word meaning to make divine.
To lift something up and empower it with holy power.
And in the U.S., we started doing this soon after the Civil War with a little thing we like to call manifest destiny.
It's like, it's now our destiny to move west and settle all these places that for realsies don't have people living there already. Oh, yes.
Yeah, the basic idea behind manifest destiny is after the Civil War, the right and righteous side won and overcame evil slavery. So, fine so far. But that means that God has ordained that it is the Americans' right, well, the United States' right. We didn't start calling it America until like the 1930s. Anyway, that's the
evolution of words.
Right of the United States to take over the entire continent because God wants you to.
It's sort of an evolution of might makes right sort of thinking where, well, we are right, so we might as well.
And you can see this everywhere because we've taken on a lot of religious iconography in the United States Capitol, including a mural in the Capitol building rotunda called the Apotheosis of George Washington.
Oh, yeah. And I'm actually looking at a picture of her right now, and there's like sort of angelic beings in flowing robes, and they're sitting on clouds. And there's a couple of them holding E Pluribus Unum on a big banner, and there's various scenes of things around that. And in the middle is sitting George Washington, and he has like he's pointing out some documents there and holding a knife, as you do. Very, very holy looking.
Yeah, because we took a bunch of fun Romany stuff and smished it together into deifying a lot of early American figures. I came across this very interesting article in the Oxford Research Encyclopedias by someone named Diane Kirby called The Cold War and American Religion. It's free and you can look it up.
I might have to look at this. I was unaware with it until before Gepwood mentioned it before the episode.
Basically, she links this manifest destiny idea that started right after the Civil War, takes itself up through basically the United States spreading all the way across the continent from one coast to the other, at which point America was incredibly isolationist. This lasted up until World War II, when isolationism started getting us into trouble, and we entered the war proper as allies of the Soviet Union, who were incredibly good wartime allies, and everyone thought we would maintain a good, healthy relationship after the war.
How about that?
We were full on course to continue doing that. But President Truman, seeing that capitalism was very, very unpopular in Europe at the time because of all the fascism, decided that this would be a problem for American capitalist interests.
And we need to make sure that there's room for our markets over there, our products.
And this kind of culminated in a 1948 election in Italy, which was kind of a contest between a Communist Party leader and a Christian Democrat. So this was kind of the first proxy war election in the Cold War.
People usually think about proxy conflicts, things like that in the Cold War. Like Middle East or East Asia or occasionally Eastern Europe. Now this is Italy, like Central Europe.
Yeah, and Italy had just ousted its fascist dictator that it had during World War II. So they needed a new government, and you had the two superpowers that had helped them free themselves from fascism, like allied with the Nazis during World War II. So it makes sense that you'd be choosing between the American system and the Soviet system, because they were the two big players in the war.
And which one was victorious could lead the nation to be more aligned with one versus the other. And Italy is was back then still a major power as far as continental politics goes, even though it was on the losing side in World War II.
But because the US and the USSR were such close allies during the war, Truman knew it would be incredibly politically devastating to just suddenly turn on your wartime allies because you wanted to further your own capitalist interest.
Like, well, you were great friends during that whole World War II, but what have you done for me lately? Really? We're not friends anymore, America?
So, what Truman does is play on the Soviet anti-religious ideas, which were there because Marx and Stalin both had serious critiques of religion and thought of it as a way to kind of manipulate people.
Mm-hmm.
But Stalin was not staunchly anti-religion. He, in fact, used a lot of religious crossover that he had with other countries and other leaders to foster relationships during the war. And it's one of the reasons that the US and the USSR were close allies.
Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, you guys are not as godless communists as we thought. Oh, I guess we can work together.
So Truman decides that what he's going to do is publicly ally himself with the Pope and the Vatican, which were still very, very powerful at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this starts to create a minor rift with the Communist Party because the Vatican was not a huge fan of the USSR. And then he starts plastering all these ideals all over the US about godless communism and America's God-given mission to take over the world.
Yep. That manifest destiny turned up to 11.
Yep. So he convinces people to continue our rejection of isolationism into a global engagement because it's God's will that America should spread Christian democracy all over the world, which is something that like half of this stuff is exactly what modern conservatives keep saying. It was our justification for going into wars in the Middle East. Basically, everything that's going on now reads directly from stuff Truman put into place in order to distance ourselves from the USSR and further American interests without having to publicly betray a wartime ally.
So, yeah, it's instead of being obvious about the opposition here, we're just going to turn everyone that you want to get on your side against you in a very sort of a manipulative sort of way. So I guess in some ways, Marx was right about religion being used to manipulate people.
Yeah, I mean, it flat out was, because they Truman and his political allies started to foster what were at the time kind of niche sects of Christianity. It's some stuff that we would now think of as like evangelical and more right-wing Christian groups. And it actually led to a massive decline of what they thought of as traditional churches of the time period, to raise up these more radical sects of Christianity that would basically link Christian ideals with the American state ideals and create what we have now, which is this odd deification of American ideals themselves. And in fact, you can kind of see this with what I thought was interesting in this piece, the Pledge of Allegiance, since they used that as some of the holy words that they had in the show. Because the Pledge of Allegiance was actually written by a minister named Francis Bellamy in 1892, and it did not include the words America or United States anywhere in it at the time, because it was conceived of as a pledge that anyone could use anywhere in the world. It just said, I pledge allegiance to my flag.
So you just insert the flag, the name of your country, and you can you modify it very lightly, and there you have the same pledge.
The Daughters of the American Revolution campaigned to have it changed to the United States of America in 1923. It was adopted as part of the U.S. Flag Code, which is a set of guidelines that we're supposed to use to say how to pay proper respect to the flag, which is a fascinating read because it includes things like the flag shall not be used for advertising or put on clothing.
I might have a shirt with the flag on it. Anyway.
Oh, no, you idolater.
That was a gift from somebody. It's kind of hard to make that not be a thing.
And in 1943, just in time for our God-given campaign against godless communism, the words "under God" were added into the thing in order to fight, communism in 1954.
Yeah. So suddenly, late to the game, God comes into things, and suddenly we're amping up that advertisement. And things don't stop there, do they?
No, I mean, this is basically when you hit the Pledge of Allegiance as we know it now. Later, you have weird challenges and things, and it's actually going out of favor recently. Another interesting, not particularly apropos of anything, but something that I found interesting was the original idea with the pledge is you were supposed to salute the flag, then extend your arm towards the flag. Later on, changed to starting with your hand over your heart, and later extending your arm palm down toward the flag. This was changed shortly after World War II for very obvious reasons.
Yep. Because it looks a little bit like, Basically,
this episode is an interestingly mixed opinion of itself, because while Roddenberry, who is famously anti-organized religion, is sort of a secular humanist, he is critiquing our religious fervor of American documents and values, which is a fine thing to critique.
Yeah, the idolatry of it.
But he's also critiquing communism at the same time, which is the exact thing that the deification and ideology of the American documentation was made to combat.
Well, I did find it kind of amusing in this episode that Tracy, who has kind of become the de facto leader of the comms, is motivated by a very capitalistic sort of mindset as far as what he wants to get out of the situation. So I guess that's the people in charge of communism are trying to get personally, profit from it, I guess.
I mean, was it very capitalist? Because he didn't say, I'm going to go sell this medicine. He's saying all of humanity can live forever.
Well, I got a sort of a vibe that he was wanting to make gain some personal influence by it. Because, the Federation will return with, as many ships as we like or something like that. And we'll be in charge of all of them or something like that. But it's very muddled. But anyway.
It's also a weird one to just, they de facto go, whoa, now we've found out that these other people were communists, so screw them.
Yeah, so they're the bad guys now by default. And
I guess they were the bad guys for allying themselves with Tracy, but we don't know anything other than they beam down to what seems to be a fully functioning post-apocalyptic society. We don't know how they operate. Apparently they've been living under communism for thousands and thousands of years, and everyone seems fine, if oddly Mongolian, which I forgot to look this up, but I'm pretty sure Mongolia was never part of the USSR.
There was some tricksiness involving Mongolia, if I recall, but I'd have to look it up myself.
They were obviously using Vietnam references because they said specifically that communism was linked to the Asiatic nations.
I just have to sigh. That's all I got here.
What do they have against Mongolia? Because every time they
I don't
show
know.
Asian people in this show as bad guys, they're Mongolian.
Well, I think I've talked about it before, where there is sort of this old time fear from like the Mongols' invasions of Eastern Europe way back in the day that sort of medically evolved and transmuted through various sort of fearful of people from the East sort of ideas, but just to have it sort of so blatantly and obvious still, even in the 60s, then it's just kind of like, what?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like all of the propaganda for anti-Japanese sentiment during World War II was equating them with Mongolians.
Doesn't make sense from a geography or cultural or whatever point there, but
I also don't get it from America. Like, isn't the entire like demonization of Mongolia like some old Chinese propaganda?
Well, it's that too. It's basically anyone who didn't like being invaded by the Mongols, I guess. Which they invaded a lot of people. Let's be honest.
That is true.
I wonder if like a few centuries down the line, people will view the British like that.
Doubtful. I mean, unless we suddenly overturn white supremacy.
We can only hope. But I was I'm glad you spearheaded a lot of this stuff. I think you did a better job about it than I did. But one thing I did want to sort of draw a circle around was the specific use of documents and books and things like that in the episode as special holy objects that are empowered by I guess the divine in this case, and that reminded me a bit of the concept of a fetish, and I don't mean of the sexy kind. I mean like the older definition where there was an object that had that was generally created by a person, but was instilled with some sort of holy power that could be used to influence people. And to a certain degree, that is kind of what things like a constitution is in a society like ours, where there is this sort of deification of the concept of America and the various historical figures associated with it. That it is something that was crafted, and because of why, how, and who crafted it, it has special, seemingly mystical powers that have kind of instilled a certain level of mystery about it, that people, react more emotionally than anything in response to when it's sort of brought up.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to think about if you kind of look at any governmental system or group of people, because while we definitely have a lot of institutions and layers and layers and layers of organization in place to keep everything functioning the way it does, something like a government, and even a government with a controlled military, only exists because enough people agree it does.
There's a legitimacy that has been established for that government, and by the people that are participating in it, believing that government should and does exist, and that it should be instilled with the powers that it does, and then that they are, and so they are at least reasonably willing to go along with what their government's all about.
This is a concept that you usually find in economics called fiat, which basically means from nothing. Mm-hmm. You hear it a lot as fiat currency, meaning a currency backed by nothingness. But it's basically everything. Like even years ago, when we supposedly had a gold-based system, we still would back it with gold, which people only agreed was worth something because everyone went, yeah, gold's worth something.
So gold itself is fiat currency.
Basically. I mean, I'm not like people get into this argument a lot. Gold is not a completely worthless metal. It is very easily pliable and it's super conductive. But, it's only worth a ton of value because people go, yeah, it's worth a ton.
And the value is, instilled upon it goes well beyond the material use of it.
I mean, if you look at something like, that's why the Spanish were all over South America, but if you look at some of the older native South American cultures, they had gold everywhere because they just used it for jewelry and they didn't have a particularly massive value placed on it. It was just an article of clothing.
Yeah, this is kind of pretty. I'll slap it on my stuff here and I'll go out in style today. And so, it was its value is not the same in those cultures as it was in the Europeans at the time. So yes.
In fact, a lot of those cultures, the like tiny bird feathers were possibly worth more than gold. It's hard to know because a lot of this stuff comes like fourth hand from invading colonizers. But
yeah, so the stories, translated by so and so in a monastery in the 1600s from an original text by some guy that was working with the Spanish conquistadors, who heard a thing from his granddad who might not be totally up on the current events back when, and so on and so forth.
Yes, you have a good point that we have developed a certain number of fetish objects, and when you start to link those with existing religions, it's very easy to kind of make that not very far leap between you believe that this constitution means something and we should follow it to you believe in a lot of religious things.
And so there's very much, as you're talking about before, this sort of religion of America that is separate but very interlinked with the general Christianity that's practiced in a lot of quarters here, and so you get ideals and orthodoxy and theology that sort of is being built up over the years about what America is, that is maybe not even really connected anymore to what's there in the very technical physical sense or even the legal sense or anything like that. There's a sort of a growing disconnect, I'd argue, between the idea of America and what's actually America is all about. But there's also people that are kind of like, this is getting a little ridiculous, so maybe we can go and actually study more about what is actually there and sort of remove the mystery a bit more, and and actually have civics classes where we figure out both the original meanings of things and how it's been sort of interpreted over the years, and come to a better sort of more harmonious society through this knowledge, and figuring out, okay, maybe these are the things that aren't so working, and now, because there's not this mystery that says everything is always going to be like this forever, we can actually change things to make them better.
Well, you put on an interesting point where if you're dealing with something slightly more religious or fetishistic, the things that you do don't matter as much. You can call them out as hypocrisy, and that works. Mm-hmm. If enough hypocrisy happens, people become disillusioned with the ideas. But the ideas matter so much more than the actions that you have to have a lot of hypocrisy before people start to either give up on the linked ideas or move off and go, no, we're actually going to use the ideas instead of whatever it is you're doing.
And so there's a choice that can sort of be made at that point.
And then you get into a lot of philosophical moral arguments. Like if you have these, let's say, the American freedom ideals, well, one, no one can agree what that means because freedom is an incredibly ambiguous term that can mean all kinds of things. But then
it means freedom, Gepwin. It means freedom. That's it.
How much are you willing to do to instill freedom? What kind of ends justify the means? If it's a super important value, you could basically argue that you should be able to do anything as long as it is in the service of instilling this thing somewhere.
And we're going to freedom you with these bombs now. So yeah, there's could be a lot to sort of unpack and all of that. But one thing I wanted to do a little bit here, if you give me a few moments here, is maybe to lift some of the mystery from the U.S. Constitution.
Oh, that could be interesting.
So the Constitution was written by guys, by men specifically, at a constitutional convention in the late 1780s, right?
Believe so.
I'm forgetting the exact dates. I probably should have written them down here. But the final ratification was in 1789, I believe, when it came into effect. And it's replaced a earlier document called the Articles of Confederation, which didn't work out so well. So they decided, we'll replace it. The framing of the Constitution, was involved a fair number of compromises. Some of them resulted in things like having a bicameral legislature, with one body being more representative of population distribution, the other one being the Senate, giving 2 votes, 2 seats to each state. But also the framing also included things like the 3/5 compromise, which is just kind of awful. But we could talk about slavery on another time. And speaking of, it also left out much more than that, other than, we can't ban slave trade before this point. And so there's all these sort of things that were sort of hashed out, and there's a lot of politics involved in putting it together, because we needed to get everybody on board, and everyone had their own sort of interests, and different states had different economies, different states had different populations, so they all wanted to have enough influence over the resulting government to both be able to further their interests and to not let a different state further that other state's interest at their own expense. And so you got this document. Starts with the preamble, which we hear in the episode, and then kicks off with the various articles. Article 1 is all about the legislative branch, its powers, what it's supposed to be up to, about. I could go the whole list, but I'm not going to right now. The Article 2 is all about the president and what the president's about, elections, things like that for the presidency, which have been changed by amendments, but we'll get to that later. Article 3 is all about the courts, jurisdictions, and things like that. Article 4 is all about how the states sort of interact. So it's movement, extradition, that sort of stuff. Article 5 is all about amending the Constitution and the various methods about that. Which there are sort of different 4 different ways to do it, but that's maybe something for another time as well. There's a lot to unpack here. I don't want to spend up too much time. There's Article 6. Which establishes, that it's basically the miscellaneous section of the Constitution where it's like, this country can have debt. The federal law is the supreme law of the land, is in the Constitution. There's no religious test for office, that sort of thing. And then finally, Article 7, which straight up says, the ratification of the Convention of the United States shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. And that's the entirety of Article 7. So now the Constitution is a little more demystified, I hope. What do you think, Gepwin? Did I do a good enough job?
Yeah. I also think there's since we've been talking about religion so much, there is a lot of religious wording in, not so much the Constitution itself, but a lot of the documents surrounding it, like the Declaration of Independence and God-given rights, etc., etc. There's been a huge amount
by the Creator.
There's a huge amount of debate over how religious the founding fathers were in the United States. But regardless of how practicing religious they were, the philosophies of the time were still very theistic and kind of used God or a creator or nature's God, as a lot of the founding fathers kind of thought of it in that period, as sort of an ultimate moral appeal.
Yeah, it's like even if we might have fallibility, we can still sort of look to this higher power to sort of justify what we're talking about.
Yeah, because they were still working off of earlier kind of theological philosophy. So while there is a lot of religious-y wording in the documents, it's not exactly religious. It's philosophical, drawing on the moral justifications of religion.
I guess it gets back to the thing I mentioned again, that there is a certain amount of politics necessary in order to even get it, ratified, and to leave out the philosophical underpinnings that are steeped in the very sort of divine backing would be basically a non-starter for a lot of people that would be needing to get you need to get the approval of.
All this stuff was being written in the 1700s. Mm-hmm. You didn't get to less theological philosophy until you hit the 1860s, when you have philosophers like Nietzsche and their God is dead ideas.
A sort of a move to divorce philosophy from notions of the divine.
Also, Nietzsche wasn't too crazy about the whole God is dead thing.
Do don't have my notes for Nietzsche up here, but the general gist of what I remember is that it's like, yeah, that's more of a product of how people are behaving more than I've now killed gods.
Yeah. The blood is on our hands. What holy games must we invent to atone, Isix?
Oh no. Maybe we have some sort of questions, answers, and the answers this week are not very good at all.
Yeah, probably.
maybe some sort of game or like in show form.
Oh, yes. Is it time for our own holy game?
It might be.
It's time for the galaxy's favorite game show. Didn't intend that to be that good of a segue.
Well, everybody, that was a fantastic segue, and I'm glad we managed to get to the game show portion of the show. Our various contestants have racked up a lot of points, and a lot of them are going to our guest stars this week. The first one is the Highlander Award, which goes to the Coms and the Yangs for having found themselves with super long living lives. Because, who knows? Gepwin, what do they win?
Oh, it's the Highlander. They have to win. There can only be one. No, there are thousands. They reference there being thousands of Yangs. This is not much of a post-apocalypse.
Well, they have had apparently thousands of years to recover, so...
And none of them ever die.
Yet none of them ever die unless they're murdered, I guess. Well, I guess maybe they'll have to develop one of those murder cultures that we've seen in a couple episodes, and then we'll see how many there are left in a few years. Our second award is the Evil Twin Award, which goes to the very planet itself that we're on today, Omega 3, because we have yet another crapsack version of Earth kicking around the cosmos now, and it doesn't make any sense. But, it's like Earth in way more ways than it should be. Where do they win, Gepwin?
Let's draw from some other slightly better science fiction and call out the infinite improbability drive, because it's not impossible, it's just very, very improbable.
Indeed. I think the likelihoods are, quadrillion to one sort of situations here. I don't think I like those odds, but apparently they work out in Star Trek more often than they should. Our third award is the What Prime Directive Award, which goes to Tracy for becoming the de facto leader of the communist forces, as also can make a buck, I guess, maybe. I don't know. Gepwin, what does he win?
Tracy wins more of our constitutional stuff because, you get a philosophy of freedom and not interfering with people with the explicit underwritten philosophy of let's go interfere with people.
Oh, that Tracy. Always going out and corrupting. I don't know where I'm going with that. That's how I am with most of this episode, Gepwin. I'm sorry. I got one more, though. The final award, prize I'm handing out is the Everybody's Dead Dave Award, which goes to the crew of the Exeter for getting themselves turned into crystal meth. What do they win, Gepwin?
The crew of the Exeter gets a lifetime supply of bottled water, which apparently they hadn't invented since they all got turned into random water.
I guess they're hoping they would had something to drink before this, and
The other idea is the book of the laws of equivalent exchange, because the listing out of human parts is just the beginning of Full Metal Alchemist.
Indeed. Wait a moment. Star Trek Full Metal Alchemist crossover. This planet they've just landed on. It's the Full Metal Alchemist planet. It must be Gepwin.
Is that why you get so many second Earths? Are they all just homunculi Earths?
I think so, yeah. This modifies my fan theory about how Bioshock and Full Metal Alchemist are linked as well now.
I mean, did you ever see the Full Metal Alchemist movie? Because that would explain a lot about this planet.
I don't think I have, actually.
I don't want to spoil it.
All right. I'll take us away, Gepwin. I think we've lost our minds at this point. I certainly have.
Yes, we have. Thank you all for joining us on the galaxy's favorite game show. Woo!
So I need to mention again, this planet, the Omega 3 here, as turning out so similar to Earth in so many ways is ridiculously unlikely. And to have now at least 2 planets that are so, basically double of Earth is like, it's just like slapping me in the face over and over again. This makes no sense.
By my count, we have at least 2 more.
Oh man. Hopefully not next episode, Gepwin. What do we got next episode?
I don't think it's next episode, because next episode is the ultimate computer.
Wait, we're talking about my computer? It's pretty badass.
The crew of the Enterprise is in a race to disable a rogue computer that has taken over control of the ship.
Uh-oh. Hopefully his name's not Hal, but...
This is the introduction of somebody who becomes name famous later on in Star Trek. Dr. Richard Daystrom.
Yes. In fact, Gepwin, you probably might remember his face there from that GURPS adventure we were going on.
Yes. So, Daystrom from the Daystrom Institute, apparently, in later series anyway, comes with a computer that, of course, is bad because it's a computer.
Yes, the computer's always the enemy in these plots. To quote Johnny Five, imprison the humans, destroy the machines. I should add that to my list. Anyway.
We need to put that on our short list for Short Circuit's a really good movie.
Yes.
Anyway, the computers are bad. Basically. Computers bad. I think we can skip this episode. So the next episode is Bread and Circus. Oh, you got 2 episodes before we get another. I guess we have to do this one because Bread and Circus is another parallel Earth.
Oh yeah, that's like Romans, right?
Yep. Oh well, you can join us next week for Computers Bad on Watches of Tomorrow.
Hey kid, I'm a computer. Stop with all the downloading. Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, automation is the wave of the future. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.